Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Your hosts, Joseph and Michelle Whalen, a husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics, are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom.
Welcome to Insights into Entertainment. This is episode 94, Fading Magic and Familiar Faces. I'm your host, Joseph Whalen, and my dedicated and hardworking co-host, Michelle Whalen.
Aww, I feel so loved.
Because you put so much effort into the podcast each week, doing all the notes and everything, and I appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
So this week we're first of all, I want to just sort of pat myself on the back because we got another copyright takedown for our sequence transition music from last week.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm sick and tired of dealing with that. So I went into GarageBand on my tablet and decided to bang out just a couple of real simple transitions. You know, no one produced these. They're not copywritten or anything like that.
They're all yours.
They're all mine. So we're gonna start out with those this week and see who I can anger this week with those.
You know, it wouldn't be a week if we didn't piss off somebody.
Exactly.
So, you know,
exactly.
Then we're not doing our job.
Yeah. So at least someone's listening to it, right? Some algorithm somewhere is paying attention.
Yeah, exactly.
So this week, we do have a number of articles to go through this week in our Disney Detective. We're going to talk about Magical Express going away, which is kind of unfortunate. We've taken advantage of that ourselves. And another thing going away is annual passes at Disneyland. So the magic is fading rapidly from the Disney parks, it seems. Then in our Tales from the Edge of the Galaxy, one of my favorite all-time books is coming back into canon in some form, Heir to the Empire. Then Lucas, another piece of really good news for me being a Star Wars gamer, is that EA no longer holds the monopoly on Star Wars games. So we'll talk about that coming.
See, I knew you'd like our Star Wars stuff today.
Absolutely. All good news. All good news. Then in our entertainment news, Chris Evans, there's rumors of him reprising his role as Captain America, maybe.
Maybe, possibly.
And then we have a touching reunion between Negan and touching in air quotes, yes, for our listening audience.
Right.
Between Negan and Maggie in Walking Dead, which is coming back in a couple of weeks. And then, as usual, we'll finish up with our insightful picks of the week.
Sure will.
Ready to get into it?
Let's do it.
All right. Go for Disney Detective.
I feel like I should be waltzing while we're doing that. So we had some big Disney news, come out during the week that obviously has a lot of people, kind of up in arms. The first one is for our East Coast Disney people, and that would be that Disney World's Magical Express is going to be discontinuing service in 2022. So, they really didn't say what the main reason was behind this, but obviously with the health and safety procedures like temperature checks and security systems, modified park hopping and all these different changes, they're kind of scaling down certain things. One of the announcements they had made that magic bands were no longer going to be given away free if you had a resort stay. So now you have to, if you want a magic band, you have to purchase one or you have to use one that you've previously used before, and now it seems that the next thing to kind of go away is the Magical Express. So beginning January 1st, 2022, Disney's Magical Express will no longer be available for transportation to and from the Orlando International Airport. The service will continue to be available all throughout 2021, but will be discontinued at the start of the following year. So complimentary transportation is still available within the resort with the buses, the monorail, the Skyliner, and a Disney spokesperson had told allears.net, which is where this article had come from, that while the minivan service still does not have a return date, they are hoping to bring it back in the future. And the mini van service was kind of like their Uber on site. But you could actually, I think, take it to some places relatively close by off-site, I believe. We never used it because we've been taking our own vehicle for many years. So obviously for those who are traveling between the Orlando International Airport and Disney World in the future, now you're going to have to find your own way to get there. But there is some good news because they are Brightline, which is a rail system that they're planning on building. It's actually from South Florida up to the Orlando area and in Disney Springs. They are actually planning to do a line from the Orlando airport to Disney Springs. So, but you're looking at like the end of 2022, maybe even 2023 at this point. So there will be that available. But of course, again, if you saw anything online or any Disney forum, everybody is like, how are we gonna get to Disney now? Blah, 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 blah. And I'm thinking, Magical Express hasn't always been around. Yes, it's been around for a while now and people got accustomed to it. But for many years, you had to find your own way to,
So that
Disney.
I guess that's the first question that I have.
Right.
Is what is the history of Magical Express? When it first was implemented, it was to support the cruise line, was it
right.
not?
When it first started, and I want to say in the late 90s, I meant to look up the date of when it actually started. When they first started doing any kind of transportation that you didn't have to pay for, it was actually through the cruise line. If you booked a land and sea package, they picked you up at the airport, and then they would take you, to your resort. And then when you had to go to your cruise, depending on if you were going to the cruise first, they would take you to the cruise, and then from the cruise to the park, and park to the airport, or whichever version of your trip that you had. Well, then they saw that this was something that they could do, and I actually remember that some of my trips, and this was back when I actually traveled alone. I did 2 Disney trips alone. They actually had, when you made your reservation, you could make a reservation with Mears and book your stay.
Mears being the transportation company.
Mears
that
being
Disney
the company that
contracts out to.
actually, that's who does the Magical Express now. So back then, you could get, I don't know, it was like $25 round trip, but you had to get your own luggage. And then that's the last time that you see your luggage until it comes to your resort room.
Yeah, now that was something that was always, going and leaving
Right.
was always convenient. Was that
Right.
you never had to handle your
You
luggage.
never had to handle your luggage. So when you get to Orlando International Airport, you basically got off the plane and you went right to a Magical Express bus. And they would say that your luggage should arrive within roughly 3 hours of your flight. So that the idea was that once you got to the park or the resort, you could go and do whatever. You didn't have to wait around for anything.
So you would check in at your home airport.
Mhm.
You'd check your luggage there. You
Yep.
get on the plane. You get off the plane in Orlando.
Yep.
They would handle your luggage.
Yep.
you would go down to the furthest possible
Right.
12-mile walk to the end of the transportation side.
Yeah, yeah.
They'd put you on a bus.
Right,
They'd drive you to the resorts.
right,
You'd get a little movie in,
Right.
in the process
Right.
there. They would go through drop off at multiple resorts. You get
Right.
dropped off at your resort. They would then bring the luggage from the airport.
mm-hmm,
They would handle it at the concierge desk,
Mhm.
and then they would deliver it to your room
Right.
at that point.
mm-hmm. Yeah.
And then when you left, you would drop off your luggage at check-in in the front.
Right, because then what they started doing was they started doing airline check-in at the resorts.
Right.
So instead of having to, take your luggage to the airport and do online, and do the check-in for your flight going home, you were able to do all of that at your resort. Again, say goodbye to your luggage. Your luggage would end up, going on its own. You would then get a ride from your resort to the airport. You'd get on your flight, and then you'd get to, get home, and then you'd
And then you
actually
would
have
hope,
to
if you, like for
Hope.
us, we fly into Philly, you would hope that your luggage
that your
showed
luggage
up.
actually
It
shows
didn't
up.
always show up, but
Right.
that wasn't always Disney's fault.
Right, because sometimes that was,
So with
just-
this going away, does
Right.
that mean that the airport check-in at the resort's going away as well?
That's, again, what people are trying to figure out. And as of right now, nothing's really come out. Is the airline checking going away? Is that,
because this was a lot more than just a ride from the airport to the
absolutely.
airport.
And-
the logistics were
and that
pretty
was
complex.
the thing, was that it started, again, this all started with the cruise line, because when you took a cruise, it was the same thing. You had special luggage tags so that you didn't have to touch your luggage until you got, to the resort. And then if you did the land and then the sea, they came and picked up your luggage at the resort. You didn't even have to bring it somewhere, and then they would bring it to the cruise as well. So they got used to that,
Yeah.
the logistics of it, and then it just grew. And you figure it's been, 20 years maybe that they've been doing that. So I could definitely see, people that haven't been going to Disney as long, or have been, and then have just gotten so used to this, and now it's gone. Now, I'm surprised that they didn't start maybe still offering it, but now you have to pay
Right.
for it. Because again, you figure it's already in place. The system, as far as I know, really hasn't had too many glitches. I could definitely see, a huge family that, doesn't want to have to, rent a car, or get a van, or bring car seats, or, when you do those big family vacations, I could see them saying, hey, listen, let me pay, a couple $100 and not have to worry about all of that,
Sure.
other stuff. So
Yeah.
again, as of right now, no news as to what's going on. But again, there's always ways to get to, the resort, from the airport. Obviously, it's not something that's going to be complimentary anymore.
Right.
So,
Well, just one more thing we're losing. Speaking of that, let's talk about something else that we're losing on our West Coast.
yeah, so for our West Coast Disney people, it seems that Disneyland is ending the annual pass program because of the pandemic. Disneyland is ending the program. It's been now 10 months that the theme park has been shut down. And obviously there's no horizon, as to when the park is going to be open. So they had issued a statement that it would also begin issuing prorated refunds to eligible pass holders. So it said, due to the continued uncertainty of the pandemic and limitations around the reopening of our California theme parks, we will be issuing appropriate refunds for eligible Disneyland Resort annual pass holders, and unsetting the current program. So Disney didn't say how many people this was going to affect, or how much money, the company would be, losing, at this point. It also, the announcement came the same day that Disneyland has now allowed county health officials to use its parking lot for large-scale coronavirus vaccination sites. So, at least something good, I guess, is being done on Disney property. But it is kind of, unsettling. Obviously, again, no dates as to when things will be opening up. Obviously, once the transmission rates start lowering, Disneyland is hoping to open at 25% capacity, and just like how Disney World did it, with reservations being required for the specific days that you're going. So, again, right now,
So just
kinda,
one more thing that Disney's doing away with that at least the locals have certainly taken
right.
advantage of.
And honestly, I think once things kind of get to a more normal atmosphere, I can't imagine that they wouldn't bring it back. I can't imagine them
Now, was this
completely doing away with it. I
was
think
this
it was
them
more,
shutting it down just because they aren't open at this point in time?
and that's I think really what it kind of comes down to, is that, and that's the thing, is they have so many different types of annual passes. The biggest one is the coast to coast pass, where you have Disneyland and Disney World. So I'm sure that's still available for people that do a lot of traveling and go to both parks. But if you figure the park hasn't been hasn't been opened in 10 months, what's the point in paying for an annual pass for a park?
Yeah.
Because they do their park passes, day to day. So if you, got it today, you have 365 days. It's not like, some seasonal parks, around here, where if you get an annual park, it's just for this, calendar year or
Right.
whatever the season is. So,
And they did mention in the article that they were planning on putting some other program in place that's still under development. They just aren't ready to announce
right.
it.
And that's probably, what it is. They're probably trying to figure out, because I'm sure once the park opens, again, you're still going to have to make a reservation to go. There's going to be some sort of limitation. So maybe it's one of the, maybe it's kind of, I could almost see them doing maybe like a multi-day park hopper type ticket, where, okay, this is good for 12 visits, so it's kind of, and you have a year to use it in, type thing. So I could kind of see them maybe starting something like that until the park is open at, 100% capacity.
Yeah.
For those, because you figure, the locals, how often are they going? Are they going,
Right.
Every day? Or are you going, every couple of weekends? So do you really need something that gives you 365 days of access, or do you only need something that gives you like 24?
Yeah. Good point.
So,
Good point. So that was all we had for our Disney Detective this week. We'll take a quick break and come back with our Tales from the Edge of the Galaxy. For over 7 years, the Second Sith Empire has been the premier community guild in the online game Star Wars: The Old Republic. With hundreds of friendly and helpful active members, a weekly schedule of nightly events, annual guild meet and greets, and an active community both on the web and on Discord. The Second Sith Empire is more than your typical gaming group. We're family. Join us on the Starforge server for nightly events such as operations, flashpoints, world boss hunts, Star Wars trivia, guild lottery, and much more. Visit us on the web today at www.thesecondsithempire.com. Go for Tales from the Edge of the Galaxy.
Pew, 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 pew.
No more pew pew.
I can pew pew if I want to. So, as you had teased about in our opening, exclusive Star Wars news. Woo! Hardcore Star Wars fans know that one of the best Star Wars stories ever told didn't happen on the screen, and it happened in the Star Wars novels. Now we've learned that the story is finally coming to the screen, and Lucasfilms is working towards adapting Heir to the Empire. Obviously, we've gotten some hints with The Mandalorian because we got to finally hear Grand Admiral Thrawn's name mentioned. So, of course, that was the
Well, and
for
Thrawn
people like
also appeared in Rebels as well.
True. So, obviously you would know a little bit more about that.
He's
you
also
know.
got several novels now too.
Right.
that are
He
canon.
has a lot of books.
He likes to read.
So obviously, the news kind of came out that they're going to be doing some crossover events that'll kind of, culminate in an adaptation of the book Heir to the Empire. And that was the first novel where in the Thrawn trilogy. It was originally published in 1991, and it tells the story of the New Republic trying to hang on to control of the galaxy after defeating the Empire at the Battle of Endor. It involves the Imperial remnant reforming under the leadership of the brilliant Grand Admiral, whose name is Thrawn. He has the kitty, right? He has the little kitty.
Yeah, he doesn't anymore though.
He got rid of the kitty?
Yeah, no more
Oh,
kitty.
that's
Well,
so
the
sad.
kitty shows up in this
Oh,
one.
does
though,
it?
so-
Oh, okay. Yeah. See, I remember when you played your Star Wars miniature game, and I remember his little character, and he had like this little.
Yeah, the kitty shows
cat-like.
up in the novel because it creates a bubble where the Force doesn't work around them.
Oh, so that's why the kitty's there.
Right.
So again, we got teased about it in The Mandalorian season 2, when Ahsoka is on the hunt, and she's obviously looking for him. So we know now he is part of canon and will be making his debut. And what was really funny was there was a tweet from, I think it was one of the congressmen from Georgia that just got elected, and he tweeted something like, "Thrawn is the new trilogy?" Question mark, question mark.
And everyone thought that Thrawn should have been the trilogy.
So, so obviously a new now we know of another Star Wars fan. Not that, we didn't know that there were a lot out there.
There are?
There's a few.
There's a couple
Couple.
out there.
Couple,
Yeah.
5 or 6 billion. So obviously now more talk about this. So obviously I never read any of the novels. You're very big on all the novels. I don't think there's one that you haven't read.
There's some of the new stuff I haven't read because it's just junk.
Right, but overall you've read all the good stuff.
All
so
the classics, all the
right,
legends.
so
I've
I
read.
think you could probably speak to the fans, that are the hardcore, novel fans, because again, we've talked about this, how certain novels were canon, certain weren't, and now it's kind of nice that they're getting this one in because this is a character that you've always enjoyed.
This novel series, which came out in the 90s,
Mm-hmm.
really resurrected the franchise at the time because it was sort of dying out. You were getting these, director release cuts that Lucas was putting out, but you got to remember this came out before the prequel trilogy. The
Right.
prequel trilogy didn't come out till '99,
Mm-hmm.
and this was what really jump started interest in the franchise again, and
Mhm.
everybody loved it. I mean, Timothy Zahn is a brilliant writer. He writes it at such a complex level and has so many working parts in all the novels that he does that it keeps you enthralled the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
And this novel series itself, introduced us to characters who were mainstays in the canon up until the point where Disney took over and basically made it all legends.
Right.
So you had great character development. This is where Mara Jade shows up.
Mm-hmm.
So you eventually see Luke and Mara Jade have a child, and that spawns more, and so much came out of this trilogy, and it's poignant to what we're seeing now
Mm-hmm.
because one of the concepts they introduced in this trilogy was a concept of clones
Mm.
and generating clones and
Okay.
force sensitive clones and stuff like that. And there's even later in the novel series itself, there's a element that was, I think, borrowed in the Expanse with, you know, making rocks that you can't see that are threatening
Oh,
planets.
okay. Okay.
So a lot of stuff that's not even Star Wars kind of springboarded off of this series too.
Okay.
So
I
it
can
was
see
just
that.
so well written, and when it came out, everyone who read it thought this was going to be the perfect sequel trilogy because it was set in the right time period.
Mm-hmm.
It was had all the right characters in it. It had a great story, and it had a handoff point at the end there.
Okay.
So at the end of the trilogy, you could have had a legitimate handoff to the next generation. So it was literally the probably the perfect trilogy that you could have springboarded off of. And Lucas didn't do anything. He backtracked. He did the prequels and then sold off to Disney, and we have what we have today.
Well, and maybe now with, Jon Favreau, taking such a positive step towards everything and being such the fanboy that he is, we're going to get what,
That is
what
true.
you've been looking for.
But is Favreau heading up this project? They haven't released the information.
Right, they
on
haven't
that
released any information, but
yet. It's very possible that this could go to Patty Jenkins. And after that spaghetti mess of a movie that Wonder Woman
Spaghetti mess.
1984 was, I really don't want to see her take something like this over. So, but anyway, it's
guess
good
we'll
news
see.
anyway. They're resurrecting one of the best novels in
Mhm.
the history of Star Wars, bringing it back in. They've brought elements and pieces of it here and there, but it's definitely going to be nice to see it come
Mhm.
back in.
yeah.
So, what else do we have in Star Wars news?
So, and then on the gaming side of things, Ubisoft announced the open world Star Wars game. They announced that they would be working on an open world game set in the Star Wars universe. It's and there hasn't really been too much talk of what it was gonna kind of be like. I know I had heard on the radio they were even talking about and trying to figure out, is it something where it's kind of all players, is it all time frames? I don't think there was really much about it, but the big news, like you had mentioned, that this is the first time that a company outside of EA is going to produce a Star Wars game since Disney acquired Lucasfilms in 2012. EA has famously produced Star Wars games for nearly 8 years, and now here is a chance, for someone else to step in and produce some of these games.
Well, we say they famously produced them for
Well-
8 years, and I think a more apt description would be infamously produced them.
Okay, sure.
You've got they resurrected Battlefront, so you
Mhm.
got Battlefront 1, Battlefront 2 out of them, which
Mhm.
was a remake of a game that Lucasfilm had put out years ago, and they eventually got it right, but they were terrible to start out. In fact, Battlefield Front 1 was still not a very good game. Battlefront 2 they came out with, and the gameplay was okay. The story was all right. They stuck elements of the continuing Star Wars story in the game itself. So parts of that emerged in Mandalorian and the sequel trilogy. The problem you run into is that nobody knows because very few, casual fans played the game and played it for the story.
Okay.
So this sort of goes back into the methodology that they had before, where they're sticking story elements in places people aren't going to see them. But EA is famous for monetizing their games, so there was a
True.
lot of controversy about the pay-to-win aspect of Battlefront when it came out. They recently released Squadrons, which is okay. I
Mhm.
mean, it's not. It was riddled with bugs when it came out.
Right,
and, you know,
right. I
pretty much
remember you
everything
having.
that EA comes out with. But the big game that EA has right now is Star Wars: The Old Republic, which is
Mhm.
the current, open world as much as open as it can be.
Right.
Um, but prior to this, the only other open world Star Wars game you had was Star Wars Galaxies that was put out by Sony.
Mhm.
And that was huge. That was a huge universe compared to what you get with Star Wars: The Old Republic.
Mhm.
In fact, when Star Wars: The Old Republic came out, it was kind of disappointing that it was very different. It was a very cookie cutter MMO style game that was very limited, very small in scope compared to what Galaxies was. And it was just people were expecting kind of Galaxies 2, and
Mm.
it wasn't along those lines. So another open world Star Wars game I think would be welcome if it was along the lines of Galaxies.
Mhm.
But the fact that EA is not the only company that's in the game now making these,
Mhm.
whether it's Ubisoft or whoever else is out there, opening that license up, I think, is probably the smartest thing that Disney's done so far with the gaming licenses. I would love to see them do the same thing with their tabletop gaming.
Mm. Yeah.
When I was into Star Wars miniatures, you had
And you were
Wizards.
really, really into it.
Yeah, Wizards of the Coast had the license,
Mhm.
and they eventually wound up giving up the license to Fantasy Flight, and I just do not like the mechanics that Fantasy Flight does. It's a
Mhm.
very proprietary system that they use. They use their own dice, their own markers, their own accessories, and if you want to play their game, you've got to buy it from them, and they are exceedingly expensive
Mhm.
as far as games go.
Right.
Whereas with the Wizards of the Coast, it was a D20 based game, so
Right.
you go out and buy that stuff anywhere you want.
Mhm.
It just made a lot more sense. But the other thing is that Lucas has always been notorious about its licensing.
Right.
Like, it's one of those things where it's Star Wars, right? So you'll make money no matter what. Like, people are going to buy it.
Right. Right.
The sequel trilogy kind of proves that. No matter how bad it is, Star
You're
Wars
still-
fans are
right.
still going to buy it.
Right. Right.
But they have exceedingly high demands traditionally. There's a high cost of licensing it, so your profit margins are significantly reduced. But they also exert a tremendous amount of control over it. Like, for instance, there were stories when I was into Star Wars miniatures where they would come out with a set every 3 to 4 months.
Mhm.
And the set usually consisted of 60 figures. Well, every single one of those figures had to go through its development phase and get approval from Lucas
Mhm.
with all their abilities and everything else before they could even be allowed to make the thing.
Wow.
And they exerted some of the same control over the games here, and mainly excuse me, mainly because of the story elements involved.
Okay.
So, Lucasfilm has kind of a reputation for being one of the more difficult licensing companies out there to work with when you're making their products. The figures are the same way. Hasbro had the figures, and
Right.
everything has to be approved at the highest level. So opening this up, I don't know if it's going to make the process better, but I think giving it to someone other than EA, who these days come across really just a bunch of software mercenaries at this point. They want to crank something out, and they want to milk it for as much as they can get, and it ruins the experience. So hopefully having this open up here is going to be a good thing for everybody, not just Disney and Star Wars, but for all the fans as well. So good news all around.
Mhm.
Bad news on the Disney front, and good news on the Star Wars front. So
At least there's something positive.
there's a good trade there.
There you go.
So let's take a quick break. I'll get a drink and clear my throat, and we'll be back with our entertainment news of the week.
Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Talking to real teens about real teen problems. Explore issues from braces to puberty, social anxiety to financial responsibility. Each week, we talk about the topics concerning today's youth. We look at how the issues affect teens, how to cope with these issues, and how parents, friends, and loved ones can help teens handle these challenges. Check out our video episodes on youtube.com/insightsintothings. Catch our audio versions on podcast.insightsintoteens.com or on the web at insightsintothings.com. Dun 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 dun.
Go for entertainment news.
So, Chris Evans is reportedly in talks to reprise his role as Captain America in a future MCU film, and the news has sent fans into a frenzy. So, according to Deadline, there is no official confirmation that a deal has been finalized, but sources advise the outlet that Evans and Marvel have been discussing it and that he is open to returning. Deadline noted that it reached out to Marvel about the rumors, and the company has no comment. Evans had made it clear in the past that he was not picking the shield back up after Avengers Endgame, and had even passed the mantle to Anthony Mackie's character, Sam Wilson, at the end of the film. So now, there's a lot of speculation as to how he could even return. Would it be through time travel? Would it be a multiverse storyline being introduced? Obviously, possibilities, are kind of endless. But again, Twitter was all abuzz with, news that this could possibly happen, and everybody was just like, yes, of course we want you back. So, who knows? Maybe it'll be true. Maybe, just kind of hearsay to kind of bring some light to the MCU. Who knows? But it would be kind of interesting to see how they would do. I could totally see them doing it as like a flashbacky type thing. But again, we haven't seen any of like the new stuff as to where the timeline goes yet after Endgame. So it should be,
Well, the
interesting
other
to see.
thing that's worth noting is Marvel is famous for killing characters and bringing them back, and for multiple universes.
Right,
and
right.
we've got Doctor Strange coming out with the multiverse. You have Spider-Man and the Spider-Verse. So there's different parallel universes that this
Right.
could happen in. They've already obviously dabbled in time travel.
Right.
So you might see that. There's a history. There was one comic series that I read that was actually very good, where Captain America meets Wolverine in World War II, and they
Okay.
wind up fighting together in World War. So there could be a whole offshoot of that where it has nothing to do with what the current phase of the Marvel Cinematic Universe is in.
Right, right.
So there's so much that they can do, that the possibilities really are endless on this one. I would certainly welcome it. He probably was, outside of Robert Downey Jr. as Tony Stark, he probably embodied the character that he portrayed more than just about anybody else.
Yeah, yeah.
Perfect for the character, especially after they had him as Human Torch and Fantastic Four before that. Didn't really
Right.
fit too well in that one.
Right, right.
But it's a great character. It's a character that has been a leading figure, a commanding figure in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and I think not having that character,
And just the Marvel universe,
right,
for so long, as well. So
Right.
how can you just not have a Captain America?
exactly. And we look at the tragic loss of Chadwick Boseman, who was a rising star, who was going to
Yeah.
take over that leading role in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. and we have this vacancy now that
Right.
I think you kind of need to bring Cap back in
Mm-hmm.
to fill that gap until we can find a more permanent solution
Right.
there.
Yeah.
So, but anyway, good news if he is coming back.
Mm-hmm.
So what else do we have? We've got Walking Dead news, don't we?
So Walking Dead is actually going to be returning for an extended season 10. It'll be 6 new episodes that'll be happening in February. Season 10 kind of it had ended. They didn't get to show the season finale because COVID had hit and they were still in post-production and things like that. And then they kind of extended, they kind of added on to the season and added these 6 extra episodes, which will be coming out. And this is where we will now get to see Negan and Maggie meeting again, where they haven't seen each other in more than 7 years when they had a conflict in season 9. So this will be kind of a big deal because obviously there is no love lost between these two characters since Negan made Maggie a widow since he was the one that killed off Glenn. Which there are still people that are very bitter about that, even though it had happened in the comics years before, and I know plenty of people that actually stopped watching Walking Dead after that happened because they were like, how could you do that? I'm like, well, they knew it was gonna happen. It was already in the comics. But anyway, so it'll be interesting to see how their paths cross. They had done a virtual table read back in October, and there was a clip that kind of came out, and so Maggie kind of tells Negan, oh, you're out? And he goes, well, I didn't escape, if that's what you're thinking. Then it seems that Carol confesses to Maggie about letting him out of jail and explains that they were about to lose everything and that he actually helped with the plot of the Whisperers, and, you know, after they lost so many of their people because of it, this was really the only thing, you know, that they could do. So it'll be interesting to see, you know, how she reacts to, you know, to all of this. And the other interesting thing is that we're going to see some backstory from Negan. We're going to see what life was like before everything happened, and his real life wife is actually playing Lucille in these flashbacks. So that'll be kind of interesting to see as well. So they return the end of February, you know, for 6 episodes. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, I think it's very cool. I'm excited to get Maggie back into the mix of things.
Right.
I think we kind of know the direction that it's going, assuming it sticks
Right.
to the comic timeline and so forth.
Right.
So that'll be a dramatic turn for the show itself. And, you know, we absolutely love Jeffrey Dean Morgan.
Oh, absolutely.
He's fantastic. So it'll definitely be good to see him come back and see what that dynamic is like.
Yeah.
So that was all we had for our entertainment news this week.
Yep.
We'll be right back with our insightful picks of the week. Go for your insightful pick.
So my insightful pick is a documentary.
Dun, dun, dun.
That never happens. This is one that actually popped up on my Netflix after, like, hey, things you might be interested in.
Things with English accents.
Things with English accents. How'd you know? So this popped up after we had finished the most recent season of The Crown. So the documentary is The Royal House of Windsor, and it actually came out in 2017. So not as up to date as some of the other documentaries, but again, you know, pretty up to date for the most part. The documentary series explores the history of the Windsor dynasty, which was founded in 1917 when Germany and Britain were at war. A combination of new research and evidence, assistance from family insiders, and access to Windsor Castle's royal archives has provided an understanding of how this royal family has survived a century of great change. We learn how George V rebranded the family from its original German roots, and now Edward the Eighth almost ruined the dynasty with his abdication in 1936. What's really interesting is, again, watching The Crown, and we know that there's parts of it that are the fabrication of
Creative license.
the creative license of the story. But what's interesting is to see in the documentary how much they really do follow, the timeline and most of the events, because what was interesting to see was certain scenes play out, film footage and whatnot in the documentary that we saw reenacted in The Crown. So it was kind of a nice accompanied show to watch if it's something that you're interested in The Crown and want to know a little bit more history behind certain things. It does a very good job of, there's a whole, thing where they talk about, the Queen Mother, and you really don't see it as much in The Crown. You see it a little bit, but you understand more of her power and how powerful she really was long after her daughter became queen. Like, she didn't want to let go of being queen. She felt she still had, more to do, and how much, behind the scenes stuff she really did. And then you get to see also with Prince Philip and Princess Diana how much they had in common, because they were outsiders to the rest of the family, and how much they kind of, Prince Philip actually tried to help her in certain things when things started going downhill. And so very interesting. Again, it plays up until 2017, so it's, again, pretty recent. And again, if you're a fan of The Crown, this is a nice little, tide you over until the next season, because it's a little bit more current, you can kind of get little hints as to where The Crown for the next season might be going with more of these future, things going on.
Okay, great pick.
Thank you.
So my pick this week is not a documentary. It's actually kind of a bit of a retread that I've had in the past, and that is The Expanse Season 5. Now, I've been a huge fan of The Expanse since
Yes, you have.
very early on. I've read all the books. I'm anxiously, if not impatiently, waiting Book 9 to be released in the coming months to kind of finish out the whole story.
Mm-hmm.
But Season 5 actually centers around the novel Nemesis Games, and it includes some plot elements from the novel Babylon's Ashes. So the season premiered December 16th. 3 episodes dropped at release, and then they're releasing on a weekly basis each Wednesday up until February 3rd. So we're about 5 in, I think, at this point.
I think so.
So we're pretty far into the season right now. Season 5 of the series picks up as multitudes of humans leave the solar system in search of new homes and vast fortunes on the Earth-like worlds beyond the alien ring, and a heavy price for centuries of exploitation of the belt finally comes due, and a reckoning is at hand. For the crew of the Rocinante and the leaders of the inner planets and the belt, the past and present converge, bringing forth personal challenges that have wide-reaching repercussions throughout the solar system. In different parts of the solar system, the crew of the Rocinante and their allies confront the sins of their past, while Marco Inarios unleashes an attack that will alter the future of Earth, Mars, The Belt, and The Worlds Beyond the Ring.
Dun dun dun.
The novel itself was very well done. And when I read the novel, I tried to envision how they were going to pull off some of the effects that happened in the novel. And I didn't think they were going to do it very well. So in watching the series and seeing how they're doing these scenes, I'm very impressed. You can tell that Amazon, since they've taken it over, have really dropped a lot of money in the budget. You're getting a lot of great cinematic shots, especially the space shots. You're seeing some of the externals of the space stations now. They're doing a fantastic job with it. The story picks up right where it left off. It sticks very closely to the novels. And that's kind of how the rest of the seasons have gone as well. They've made changes because there's 8 novels right now that are out. And then there's a couple of novellas that are out that are short stories that accompany them. And the previous seasons have actually incorporated the short stories into the seasons themselves. You'll remember the one episode where they discover the Epstein Drive.
Right.
Has that. That was actually out of one of the novellas.
Okay.
So there's an episode out of one of the novellas that's coming up in this season too, which should be very interesting because it really contributed to some of the backstory of one of the key characters. So the season itself is fantastic. I can't wait to watch the rest of it. And assuming that Amazon is going to continue with it, it should be a great story moving forward because there's a lot of great stuff left to tell from the novels in this. So The Expanse Season 5 available now on Amazon Prime. So I think that was all we had this week.
Yep.
Do we have any closing thoughts or anything like that?
No, not that I can think of.
All right. Well, before we go, I do want to invite folks to subscribe to the podcast since I neglected to do so at the top of the podcast.
That's okay.
You can find audio versions of the podcast listed as Insights into Entertainment, and video versions are listed as Insights into Things, and that includes all of the network's podcasts. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, iHeartRadio, Amazon, Pandora, and pretty much any place else that you can get a podcast at this point. We would also invite folks to reach out to us, give us your feedback, tell us what we're doing right, what we're doing wrong. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com.
Or you can find us on Twitter where we haven't been banned at insights_things.
We're on Twitch at twitch.tv/insightsintothings.
On Facebook at facebook.com/insightsintothingspodcast.
We are on Instagram at insightsintothings.
Oh, the audio version of all of our podcast. I was expecting
Line,
you to
please.
say line. The audio versions of all of our podcasts are at podcast.insightsintoentertainment.com.
And you can get high-res versions of our podcasts at youtube.com/insightsintothings, where we're also not banned.
And on the web, if you missed any of those links and not sure where to find us, go to insightsintothings.com and that'll find everything.
And that's it. Another one in the books. We're done.
Have a good week, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.